I woke up to the same alarm for the 63rd time, and even the sound had started to feel like an insult. 6:10, a synthetic chime that pretended to be gentle, while it dragged me back into the 1 year of my life that refused to end. My bedroom ceiling in Maple District had a faint water stain shaped like a continent. I knew every crack, every speck of peeling paint, every threadbare corner of the blanket. I knew the exact second the radiator clicked, the exact moment the neighbor's dog barked, the exact line my mother would shout from the kitchen. "Rena, you'll miss the metro." I lay still, eyes open, and let the weight of the loop settle over my ribs like a wet coat. People who romanticize time travel think you'd use it to become a genius, a billionaire, a lottery god. They imagine you collecting secrets like coins. They don't imagine that the loop can erase you. They don't imagine that you can study for an exam 90 times and still forget the formulas on day 91, because the loop doesn't rewind your body so much as it rewinds your permissions. Every reset stole the crispest parts of my memory and left only the bruises. Familiarity without access. Dread without explanation. The year was always my final year at Northbridge Preparatory. Always the pre-qualification year for the national certification. The test that decided who got scholarships, who got internships, who got to escape Maple District with their name intact. I had taken it so many times that my hands could fill in the bubble sheet from muscle memory, and yet every time I sat down to calculate a probability, my brain became a blank white page. My grades climbed anyway through sheer repetition. Not enough to make me extraordinary, but enough to be almost free. Almost. Because every time I got close to a life that didn't smell like cheap detergent and tired, the world snapped back to this morning, and I was Rena Hale again, 17, trapped in a corridor of lockers and fluorescent lights. For a long time, I blamed the universe. Then I learned the rule. The loop didn't happen because of me. The loop happened because someone else, someone central, kept deciding not to stay alive. When the center gave up, the story rewound. I wasn't the heroine. I wasn't even the friend. I was a passerby with a scholarship and a part-time job at a bakery, a face no one would remember in the grand romance that Northbridge loved to perform for itself. The first time I noticed the reset, I thought I'd had a breakdown. The second time, I thought I'd been drugged. By the 7th time, I knew it was real. By the 50th, I was so tired of being collateral that I started to hate the person whose death pulled me back. That person was supposed to be the campus golden boy, the one the school counselor called at risk with a soft voice meant to inspire pity. His name in the school's whispered mythology was Kenji Sato. Top scores, tragic eyes, orphaned by some vague accident, rescued by scholarships and the affection of our saintly class representative, Mina Park. In the romance of Northbridge, Mina's job was to save Kenji with kindness. In the loops, she kept failing, Kenji kept falling, the world kept rewinding, and I kept being dragged back to 610 like a prisoner on a leash. On the 63rd morning, I made a decision that surprised even me. If the center of the story refused to hold, I would shake the story hard enough to change its shape. I got out of bed, dressed in the same uniform white shirt, navy skirt, blazer, that never fit right across my shoulders, and stared at my reflection. My face looked normal. That was the problem. Normal faces get erased. I walked to school with the cold wind pinching my cheeks, and I rehearsed the speech I would give to Kenji. It was not kind. It was not poetic. It was pure exhaustion translated into words. I imagined standing in front of him and saying, "You're going to be fine. You're going to get money and influence and a future. Stop dragging the rest of us into your collapse. If you want to die, do it quietly and don't reboot the world on your way out." That was cruel, and I knew it. But cruelty was just honesty without patience, and I had run out of patience several loops ago. In the corridor outside Class 12B, I saw Mina Park's neat ponytail first, then her face as she leaned toward a boy slumped asleep on his desk. This was the scene from the romance. Mina always hovered. Kenji always slept as if waking up required permission he didn't have. I marched in without asking. Mina's eyes widened. "Rena?" she whispered, startled that a background student knew her name. I ignored her. I reached the sleeping boy, raised my hand, and slapped his cheek with enough force to sting my palm. The sound cracked through the room. Several students gasped. Mina froze like a bird under a shadow. The boy's head snapped up. His eyes, dark and sharp, focused on me immediately, not blurred with sleep at all. That, right there, was wrong. Kenji's eyes in the loops always looked fogged. like he was half elsewhere. These eyes looked present, dangerous. They were too steady. His cheek reddened under my handprint, and the smile that lifted one corner of his mouth was not the defeated softness I expected. It was amused. It was cold. "You picked the wrong desk," he said, voice low enough to scrape. The room went very quiet. Behind me, someone whispered, "Is she insane?" Mina's hand flew to her mouth. I stared at the boy, heart thudding. "Kenji Sato." I snapped, because my anger had momentum. "Stop. Not Kenji," he interrupted, and the way he said it made my spine tighten. He stood up in one smooth motion, taller than I'd clocked sitting down, shoulders broad under the uniform like he didn't belong in it. "Kenji sits there," he added, nodding toward the middle row, where a different boy looked up from his notes, startled. The startled boy's eyes were indeed foggy. His smile was polite, too polite. The boy I had slapped looked at me like a scientist observing a lab rat that had unexpectedly bitten him. I swallowed. The classroom air suddenly felt too thin, and then, as if the universe enjoyed humiliating me, my vision flickered, not in a dizzy way, but in a layered way, like someone had opened a translucent window in front of my eyes. Lines of text appeared in midair, faint and scrolling, like live annotations only I could see. They hovered above the desks, above Mina's shocked face, above the slapped boy's dark eyes. The letters were not from any app I knew. They weren't projected. They were simply there, as if the world had acquired subtitles. "Great job, background girl. You just slapped the wrong guy. That's not the male lead. That's the antagonist. The real problem. Oh no. That one holds grudges. Like, end-of-the-world grudges." The comments, because that's what they felt like. A chorus of unseen spectators kept scrolling. "Don't panic. He's terrifying. But he has a weakness. He's obsessed with one person. If you can convince him you're that person, you might live." I blinked hard. The text stayed. Mina's voice trembled. "Rena, what are you doing?" she asked. But I couldn't answer because my brain was trying to reconcile the fact that my exhaustion had just collided with a different story. The boy I had slapped leaned closer. "Say my name," he said. His tone wasn't a request. It was a test. My mouth went dry. The comments helped, as if reading my thoughts. Antagonist. Jae-in Kwon. Wealthy family. Abused. Brilliant. Terrifyingly attached when he chooses someone. Don't argue. Don't run. Lee fast. My heart hammered. I had no plan for this. In the loops, I barely interacted with anyone beyond the bakery and my small friend group. Jae-in Kwon was a name I'd heard in gossip. The Kwon heir. The boy whose father funded half the school. The boy everyone admired from a distance because admiration was safer than curiosity. People said he had a temper like glass. People also said he never lost. "Jae-in," I said, voice thinner than I wanted. His eyes narrowed, and the air seemed to tighten around his shoulders. The comments flashed more urgently. "Tell him you're his future wife. Do it. It's stupid, but it works. He's weird about fate. He'll hesitate if you sound like you already belong to him." My sanity screamed no. My survival screamed yes. I lifted my chin, forcing my voice to steady. "Fine," I said, and the room's silence pressed on my skin. "I slapped you because you deserved it, and because I'm your future wife. And in the future you'll beg me to slap you again." Mina made a strangled sound. Someone behind me choked on a laugh. Jae-in's expression didn't soften. It sharpened. "My wife," he repeated, like he was tasting poison to see if it killed him. "Are you sure?" I could feel sweat gather at my spine. The comments blinked. Drop details. "He has a scar on his left thigh. Allergic to shellfish. Loves yogurt drinks. Sleeps naked. He will freak out if you mention the sleeping thing. So build up slowly." I didn't know who they were, or why they knew this, but desperation makes you obedient to any voice that sounds confident. I forced the words out. "You have a scar on your left thigh," I said. Jae-in's pupils contracted. "You're allergic to shellfish," I continued. "You pretend you're not, but you swell up anyway. And you like yogurt drinks, the plain kind, not the fruit ones." The room held its breath. Mina stared at me like I had grown horns. Jae-in's hand shot out and clamped over my mouth before I could say the next thing. His palm was warm, firm, and his fingers trembled once, barely. His ears reddened against his will. "Stop!" he hissed, and his eyes flashed with something like panic underneath the anger. His hand stayed over my mouth, but he leaned closer, voice low enough that only I could hear. "Who told you?" I blinked, trapped under his hand, and the comments danced, delighted by the tension. "He's flustered. Keep going, but carefully. Don't mention the naked thing out loud. It's too much. Say it like you're joking." I pried his hand away gently, because if I fought, he'd interpret it as threat. "Relax," I whispered, cheeks burning. "I know a lot about you. That's why I'm standing here. That's why I slapped you. You can hate me later. Right now you need to not ruin my day." His eyes flickered, as if he wasn't used to someone speaking to him like he was a person and not an explosion. The bell rang, shattering the moment. Students exhaled. Mina grabbed my sleeve, dragging me toward the door. "Rena," she whispered urgently. "What did you do?" "Jayan is—" "I know," I snapped, then softened because Mina's fear wasn't malicious. "I made a mistake," I murmured. "But I'm trying to fix something bigger." Mina looked like she wanted to demand more, but her attention darted to Jayan, who stood by his desk, staring at me as if I were a riddle that had just insulted him. When I turned away, my vision flickered again. The comments continued, faint but present, like a chorus that had decided I was entertaining. "Congrats. You survived the first scene. Now don't let him follow you. He will. He's suspicious. He's also curious. Curiosity is the beginning of obsession for him." I swallowed hard. I did not need another person obsessed with me. I needed Kenji Sato alive. I needed Mina's romance to succeed, even if I had to drag it across the finish line by the hair. I spent the next week avoiding Jayan with the kind of frantic caution usually reserved for wild dogs. I changed routes between classes. I ate lunch in the library. I kept my head down. It didn't matter. On the 6th day, I found him leaning against the stairwell rail outside the bakery club room, arms folded, eyes fixed on me. His presence made the hallway colder. "Future wife," he said, voice smooth. "You've been hiding." I forced a laugh that sounded like someone else. "I've been busy," I replied. "It's exam season. Everything is exam season here," he said. His gaze dropped to my hands, then back to my face. "Tell me how you knew." I considered lying again. The comments flickered. "Tell him partial truth. He hates being fooled, but he respects strategy. Mention that you see notes or annotations about the world. He'll think you're insane, but he already thinks you're interesting." I hated that. Interesting to someone like him could become dangerous. "I see things," I said carefully, like floating notes, about people, about the future. Jayan's eyes narrowed. "You're saying you're hallucinating?" he asked, as if testing the word. "I'm saying the world is a book," I blurted, frustration spilling, "and I'm stuck rereading the same chapter because the male lead keeps dying, and I'm tired." That last part came out raw, honest. Jayan's expression shifted, not to sympathy, but to attention. "The male lead," he repeated. "Kenji." My shoulders tensed. "Yes," I said. Jayan's gaze flicked down the corridor toward Kenji's classroom. "So you slapped me because you were aiming for him," he said, and it wasn't a question. Heat crawled up my neck. "Yes," I admitted, because there was no point pretending otherwise. Jayan's mouth curved slightly. "At least you're honest about your incompetence," he said. "But you lied about being my wife." The comment stung more than it should have. "I lied to not die," I snapped. Jayan stepped closer, and the air between us tightened again. "You think I would kill you," he murmured. "Wouldn't you?" I shot back before I could stop myself. His eyes darkened, but instead of anger, something like amusement flickered. "Depends," he said, "on whether you're useful." I hated that my stomach sank, hated that fear made my body listen. The comments flashed like neon. "He's not denying it. Do not antagonize him without leverage. Offer him a deal. He loves deals. Deal-making makes him feel in control." I swallowed and forced my breath to steady. "Fine," I said, forcing calm. "Here's a deal. You leave Kenji alone. You don't interfere in whatever is happening with him and Mina. And I'll keep answering your questions." Jayan's gaze sharpened. "Why should I care about Kenji?" he asked. "Because if he dies," I said, voice steady now, because my anger gave me spine. "The world resets. Everything you have, everything you think you're building, It all rewinds. You go back to day one. You lose every win, every deal, every control. Jayan's face went still. The idea of losing control hit him like a slap. That's a claim, he said slowly. Prove it. The comments whispered. He's intrigued. Tell him something he did in another loop. Something only he would know. My memory, the cursed unreliable thing, scrambled. But I had flashes, impressions. I remembered one loop where Jayan broke a boy's nose behind the gym because the boy had mocked his mother. I remembered the next morning, the bruise under Jayan's collar he tried to hide. In a previous loop, I said carefully, you skipped lunch on Wednesday and went to the music room. You played the same 4 notes on the old piano until your knuckles bled. Jayan's jaw tightened. His eyes flickered with recognition. No one knows that, he said. Exactly, I replied, breath shallow. For the first time, Jayan looked not powerful, but unsettled. If what you're saying is true, he murmured, then I'm not the only one trapped. The comment softened, almost sympathetic. He's lonely. He hides it with cruelty. Don't comfort him too much. Just don't humiliate him. No, I said quietly. You're not. He stared at me for a long moment, then stepped back as if making a decision. Fine, he said. I'll play along. He tilted his head. But if you're lying, future wife, he added, voice low, I'll make sure you regret having a mouth. My knees wanted to wobble. I kept them still. Deal, I said, because I had come too far to flinch now. The next stage of the loop was always the same. The rooftop scene. In early May, Kenji would climb to the school's rooftop garden after exams, stand by the glass railing, and stare at the city like it was a door he was too tired to open. Mina would follow, pleading softly. He would smile sadly. He would step over. The world would reboot. I had tried stopping him with kindness. I had tried threatening him. I had tried calling teachers. I had tried physically dragging him away, only for him to return later when no one watched. The loop always found its way back to his decision. This time, I had a new variable, Jayan. I didn't trust him, but he was dangerous in the way only rich boys with nothing to lose are dangerous, and sometimes danger is the only thing the universe respects. On the morning of the rooftop day, the comments appeared as soon as I blinked awake, like they had been waiting. Today is the pivot. Don't let the scene play out the same. Kenji's death resets everything. Mina will fail if you leave her alone. But if you interfere, you might awaken the antagonist's darker arc. Choose carefully. I sat up, heart heavy. I wasn't trying to write a perfect story. I was trying to escape one. At school, I watched Mina all day. She smiled too brightly, as if her cheerfulness could plug a leak. Kenji moved like a ghost, polite, distant, collecting everyone's pity like a burden. At lunch, he didn't eat. He stared at his phone with the hollow focus of someone reading instructions for how to disappear. I wanted to shake him. I wanted to scream. Do you know what you're doing to me? Do you know I've died 100 small deaths in your shadow? But anger didn't save him. Anger only fed his conviction that the world was cruel. After last period, I texted Jayan. Rooftop. Now. He replied instantly. I'm already there. My stomach dropped. I sprinted up the stairs, breath burning. The rooftop door was ajar, wind whining through the gap. When I pushed it open, the garden smelled of wet soil and distant exhaust. Kenji stood by the railing, hands on the glass, eyes fixed on the horizon. Mina stood behind him, crying quietly, words falling like leaves. Please, Kenji, we can talk. We can. Jayan leaned against a planter, arms folded, expression unreadable. He looked like he belonged there in the way predators belong at the edge of a clearing. Kenji turned his head slightly, as if he had heard my footsteps, and his eyes met mine. They were so tired. Rena, he said softly, as if we were friends. We weren't. We were co-captives. I walked forward, not gentle. Stop, I said. Kenji smiled faintly. You don't understand, he murmured. I understand too well. I snapped, voice cracking. Mina gasped at my tone. Jayan's gaze sharpened like he was enjoying the chaos. I forced myself to focus. Kenji, I said, slower, because panic makes you rush. If you step over, everything resets. Mina loses everything she's built. I lose everything. Everyone loses. Kenji's eyes flickered. Everything resets, he repeated, like the phrase was a lullaby. That would be merciful. Mina sobbed. No, she whispered. No, Kenji, please. Kenji's smile tightened. I'm tired, he said. I'm so tired of being saved and still feeling empty. Jayan chuckled, a low sound that made Mina flinch. He's dramatic, Jayan said. Kenji glanced at him, and something like irritation flickered in Kenji's eyes. That, too, was new. Kenji had never been irritated in the loops. He had always been soft. You shouldn't be here, Kenji told Jayan quietly. Jayan's eyebrows rose. But I am, he replied, and I'm bored. Kenji looked back at the horizon. I don't want to be a burden anymore, he said. The words hit me like cold water because they sounded like my own in some of the darkest loops. I took a breath. The comments flashed. Reveal the cost. Tell him what he's doing to you. Shame might not save him, but responsibility might anchor him. People who feel like burdens sometimes respond to learning they are also anchors. I swallowed hard, throat tight. Kenji, I said, voice rough. I've lived this year 63 times. Mina's head snapped up. Kenji's shoulders stiffened. Every time you die, I continued, I wake up at 6:10. I retake the same exams. I work the same shifts. I watch my mother's face crease with worry. And I can't change anything because the world won't let me keep the memories long enough. I've clawed my way from earning pocket change to almost earning a scholarship internship, and every time I get close, you step off a roof and drag me back. My voice broke. I hated the way that was true. Kenji's hands tightened on the railing. That's impossible, he whispered. It's happening, I said. You are not the only one suffering. You're just the only one who gets to choose to end it for everyone. Mina stared at Kenji, horror dawning. Jayan watched Kenji with new interest, like he had just realized Kenji held a trigger. Kenji's breath shook. I didn't ask for that, he whispered. Neither did I replied. The wind whipped my hair across my face, and tears stung my eyes, not from sadness, but from rage at how unfair it was that I had to beg someone to stay alive so my own life could continue. Kenji turned toward Mina, eyes wet. Mina, he murmured. Mina stepped forward, hands trembling. I'm here, she whispered. Kenji's shoulders sagged. I'm sorry, he said. I tried, Mina sobbed. I tried so hard. Kenji's gaze slid to me again. If you're telling the truth, he said quietly, then you've been trapped because of me. I nodded. Kenji closed his eyes. Then maybe, he murmured, I should stay. Hope flared in my chest like a match, and then Jae-in pushed off the planter and walked forward. Cute, he said. But staying doesn't fix the problem. Mina's eyes widened. Jae-in, stop, she whispered. But he ignored her. He leaned close to Kenji, voice low, cruelly casual. If you stay, you'll still be you. Still empty. Still watched. Still used as a centerpiece for a love story you didn't ask for. If you jump, you at least get to control something. Kenji flinched, like the words found the bruise under his ribs. Rage surged through me. You promised, I hissed at Jayan. He glanced at me with a smile that was almost affectionate. I promise not to interfere, he said. This is advice. It's sabotage, I spat. Jayan shrugged. Is it? Kenji's hands trembled. Mina grabbed Jayan's sleeve. Please, she whispered. Don't. Jayan looked down at her hand like it was an insect. Let go, he said softly. Mina's fingers released, recoiling. I stepped forward, chest heaving. Why? I demanded of Jayan. Why are you doing this? Jayan's eyes went very dark. Because if the world resets, he said quietly, I get to keep my leverage. If it doesn't, I have to live in a world where I can't control the story. His honesty was terrifying. The comments flared in my vision. There it is. He's been aware longer than you think. He might have memory fragments too. He likes the loop because it protects him from consequences. Kenji stared at Jayan, realization dawning. You're enjoying this, Kenji whispered. Jayan smiled, and it wasn't warm. I'm surviving, he corrected. Kenji turned back to the railing, shoulders shaking, and my hope cracked. I couldn't let this happen. I moved without thinking. I grabbed Kenji's wrist and yanked him away from the glass. He stumbled back, startled. Mina gasped. Jayan's eyes flashed with something dangerous. Don't touch him, Jayan warned. Touch me then, I snapped, adrenaline making my voice reckless. If you want someone to punish, punish me. Leave him alone. Jayan stepped closer, and I could feel his anger like heat. Future wife, he murmured. You're brave when you're desperate. Kenji looked between us, confusion and fear tangled. What is happening? He whispered. The comments raced. This is the fracture. If you can turn Jayan's obsession into protection instead of sabotage, you can hold the loop. Use the one thing he can't stand. Losing what he claims. Make him claim you publicly. He'll stop trying to reset if he thinks reset threatens his possession. The logic was disgusting. It also sounded plausible. I swallowed my pride like glass. I turned to Jayan and lifted my chin. Fine, I said loudly enough for Kenji and Mina to hear. If you want control, take it, but not through destruction. I stepped closer to Jayan until his breath brushed my face. I'll play your stupid fate game, I whispered. I'll be your future wife, right now, publicly, if that's what it takes to make you stop pushing him. Jayan's eyes widened a fraction. The rooftop wind hissed through the planters. Mina stared, stunned. Kenji looked horrified. Rena, Mina whispered. No, yes, I said, voice steady now because decision is a kind of armor. I reached up and gripped Jayan's collar, then kissed him. It wasn't soft. It was a collision of desperation and strategy. Jayan froze for half a second, then kissed back with startling intensity, as if he had been waiting for permission to become a storm. When I pulled away, my lips tingled and my cheeks burned. Jayan's pupils were blown wide. He looked almost feral. You, he breathed, and there was hunger in the word. I forced myself not to flinch. Now, I said, voice shaking, you're involved. If the world resets, you lose this moment. You lose me. I hated how manipulative it sounded. I hated that it worked. Jayan's gaze flicked to Kenji, then back to me. Fine, he said, voice hoarse. He stepped between Kenji and the railing, blocking the glass with his body like a wall. You're not jumping today, he told Kenji. Not kindly, but firmly. Kenji blinked, startled by being ordered instead of pleaded with. Jayan looked over his shoulder at me. And you, he murmured, are coming with me. The way he said it made my stomach drop again. Mina rushed forward. Rena, you don't have to. I do, I said quietly. Not because he owns me, because I want this loop to stop. Kenji's eyes were wide with guilt. Rena, he whispered. I didn't know. Then know now, I said, voice softening because his guilt wasn't performance. And stay alive. We got Kenji down from the rooftop. Mina walked beside him like a fragile guardian. Jayan walked beside me like a jailer wearing a lover's smile. The whole way down the stairs, the comments hovered faintly, buzzing. Congratulations, you changed the scene, but you just tied your fate to the antagonist. Be careful what you bargain with. Jayan dragged me to the empty music room, locked the door, and turned to face me with an expression that made my skin prickle. That kiss, he said slowly, wasn't acting. I swallowed. It was strategy, I said, trying to sound firm. Jayan laughed softly. Everything is strategy for you, he murmured, stepping closer. Tell me, he said, voice low. What strategy makes your pulse jump like that? Heat flooded my face. I hated my body's honesty. Stop, I said too. This is a deal. You protect Kenji. And you answer my questions. Jayan finished, eyes dark. Yes, I answered, voice clipped. He leaned in, close enough that I could see the faint scar near his eyebrow, the kind that comes from being hit. Then answer, he murmured. Why do the notes say I'm obsessed with one person? My stomach clenched. The comments flickered, suddenly hesitant. He's close to the truth. He was obsessed before the reset. Not in this version. In the original life. Tell him you don't remember. Tell him you're missing pieces. I took a shaky breath. I don't know, I admitted. I don't remember everything. The loop steals it. Jayan's eyes narrowed. It steals yours, he said. Not mine. I stiffened. You remember? I whispered. Jayan's gaze dropped, then lifted. Fragments, he said. Like dreams you can't shake. A girl's laugh in a stairwell. A yogurt drink left on my desk. A letter with drawings. His voice tightened. And then, emptiness. My chest went cold. The comments fluttered with excitement and dread. He remembers the original. The person he was obsessed with was the girl who gave him softness when he had none. It might be you. It might not. That's the twist. I stared at him, heart pounding. Why didn't you say? I asked. Jayan's mouth twisted. Because in my fragments, he said, I lose her, and I refuse to admit loss to anyone. He stepped closer, and his voice dropped. When you slapped me, he murmured, it felt like something that had already happened, like you had already hurt me and already belonged to me. It made me awake. I swallowed hard. The music room felt too small. So you wanted the loop to keep going, I said slowly, because it kept you from facing the end. Jayan's eyes flashed. The end is a lie, he said. Everything rewinds. Nothing has consequences. That's safer. His honesty was brutal. It's also a prison, I said. Jayan's gaze held mine, and for a moment, the cruelty fell away, revealing a boy shaped by pain into something sharp. Prisons are familiar, he said quietly. Freedom is where people leave. The words hit me in the chest because they sounded like something I might have said if I had grown up with money instead of love. I took a slow breath. I'm not leaving, I said, and I didn't know if I meant it or if I was still bargaining. Jayan's expression flickered. Don't promise, he said, voice rough. People who promise always break. The comments hovered, almost gentle. He's afraid, not of you, of hope. Hope is the most dangerous thing to give someone like him. The days after the rooftop felt different, like the story had shifted tracks. Kenji didn't disappear. He still looked tired, but Mina's presence changed. She stopped pleading and started listening. She took Kenji to the counselor, not to fix him, but to support him while he sought real help. Kenji began eating lunch again. The loop didn't reset. Every morning I woke up and held my breath, waiting for 6:10 to repeat, but the date moved forward. June became July. The air warmed. The city changed. For the first time in what felt like lifetimes, the world kept going. I should have been relieved. Instead, a new fear grew. What would happen when the loop ended, and I had to live with the bargain I'd made? Jayan didn't let me forget. He followed me through hallways with the casual ownership of someone used to people moving around him. He appeared at my part-time bakery job after school, buying yogurt drinks he didn't even open, leaving them on my counter like offerings. He sat at the back table, watching me frost rolls, eyes unreadable. My coworker, Sarah, whispered, "Why is the Quan heir staring at you like you owe him money?" I forced a laugh. "Maybe I do," I muttered. The comments, less frequent now, still chimed in when things turned tense. "He's testing whether you'll run. Don't run now. Set boundaries. Boundaries are how you turn obsession into partnership instead of captivity." One evening, after closing, Jayan walked me home in silence, hands in his pockets. At my building entrance, I turned and faced him. "We need rules," I said. He tilted his head. "Rules," he repeated, amused. "For me?" "For us," I corrected. "If we're pretending," I added, and the word felt flimsy. Jayan's gaze darkened. "Pretending," he echoed. I swallowed and forced my breath to steady too. "If you keep acting like you own me," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady, "I'll regret saving the loop." Jayan's jaw tightened. For a moment, I expected anger. Instead, he exhaled slowly. "What rules?" he asked. "You don't show up at my job unless I ask," I said. "You don't touch me in public to prove a point. You don't threaten my friends. And you don't sabotage Kenji." Jayan's mouth curved in a small, sharp smile. "And if I follow these rules?" he asked. My throat tightened. "Then," I said slowly, "I'll keep my side. I'll answer questions. I'll stay." The last word felt like a stone I placed between us. Jayan looked at it as if deciding whether to break it. Then he nodded once. "Fine," he said two. "But you add one rule." I blinked. "What?" "No lying about what you feel," he said softly, and the softness in his voice startled me. "You can lie to survive. You can lie to win. But don't lie to yourself when you're with me." My chest tightened. I didn't know what I felt. I knew what I feared. I knew what I wanted. To never wake up to 6:10 again. But feelings were messy. And I had spent 63 loops training myself to be efficient, not vulnerable. "That rule is unfair," I said. Jayan's gaze held mine. "Most honest things are," he murmured. He stepped closer, not touching me, just offering his presence like a question. "Good night, Rena," he said, then turned and walked away into the warm night. The summer that followed was the first summer I had truly lived. I graduated from Northbridge. Kenji, still fragile, stayed alive long enough to sit the national certification and pass. Mina cried with relief when he opened his results and didn't smile sadly, but smiled small and real. I passed too, by some miracle of stubborn study and the fact that the loop's grip had loosened enough for my memory to hold. I earned an internship at a transit engineering firm, the kind of job that could lift my mother out of the Maple District cycles. On the day the acceptance email came, my hands shook. I read it 3 times, terrified it would vanish. It didn't. The world stayed stable. For a while, the comments stopped appearing. I almost convinced myself they had been a stress-induced delusion. Then, on the first night after graduation, I found a plain envelope slipped under my apartment door. No name. Inside was a single sheet of paper covered in careful handwriting. It wasn't a love letter, it was a list. Yogurt drink, plain, shellfish allergy, scar on left thigh, piano room, 4 notes. A small drawing of an umbrella. At the bottom, a question. "Who told you?" My stomach dropped too. 2. The handwriting was Jayan's. The list wasn't accusation. It was fear, disguised as inventory. I texted him, "Meet me. Now 2. 2. He replied with a location. The riverside walkway behind the old train station, where the city lights reflected in moving water like broken jewelry. I arrived breathless. Jayan stood by the railing, hands gripping the cold metal. His face looked pale under the streetlights, as if he hadn't slept. Though when he saw me, his jaw tightened. "Are you still pretending?" he asked, voice low. The question hit harder than it should have. "I don't know," I admitted, and honesty felt like stepping off a ledge without knowing if there was ground. Jayan's eyes narrowed. "I remember more," he said. "Enough to hate you!" My stomach twisted. "Hate me?" I whispered. Jayan's laugh was short and bitter. "In my fragments," he said. "There's a girl who keeps appearing. She gives me things. Letters. Drinks. A ridiculous umbrella when it's not raining. She looks at me like I'm human. And then she disappears." His voice cracked. "I remember finding out she died." The words punched the air out of my lungs. The comments flickered back into my vision like a startled bird. "Here it comes. This is the original. He was attached before the loop, before the school romance, before Kenji. The girl was you, but you lost your memory of him because the loop demanded a price." My hands went cold. "Jayan," I whispered. "I don't," he said sharply, eyes shining with anger and grief. "Don't pity me. Don't lie." He stepped closer, wind whipping his hair. "Tell me," he demanded. "Did you know me before? Did I know you? Why do I feel like you're the missing piece of a life I can't access?" My throat tightened. I wanted to say no, because no would be safer, but the loop had taught me that lies pile up like debt and eventually crush you. "I don't remember," I said, voice shaking. "But I think I did." Jayan's eyes darkened. "Think," he repeated. "That's not enough." The comments flashed urgently. "There's a way. The notes existed because someone in another layer wanted you to remember. The commentary is residual intent. You can trigger memory by confronting the anchor event. The hospital, the donation, the letter. He lost his sight once. He gained it through you. That's the thread." I stared at the river, mind racing. Hospital, donation, letter. The idea made my skin prickle because it felt like a memory I couldn't quite touch. I had been sick as a child. Congenital heart defects, restrictions, not running, not joining sports. I had always thought that was just my life. In the loops, my body always felt fragile, like a clock with delicate gears. "Jayan," I said slowly, "did you ever lose your eyesight?" He froze. His breath hitched. "Yes," he said, voice rough. "After an accident. It lasted months. I recovered." He swallowed. "Why?" My hands shook. "Because I've always had a scar right here," I said, pressing my fingers to the spot above my heart. "From surgery when I was a kid. Because I signed a donor registry the day I turned 18 in one of the loops, even though I didn't know why it felt urgent." My voice trembled. "Because sometimes I wake up with the taste of antiseptic in my mouth like I've been in a hospital I can't remember." Jayan stared at me like he was seeing a ghost step out of a fog. The comments brightened. Yes, this is it. The original Rena died young. She left something behind that kept Jayan alive. He broke the story to get her back. The loop was his rebellion against loss. My knees felt weak. If that's true, I whispered, then this loop, this whole reset. Jayan's jaw clenched. Was me, he admitted, voice low. I found out about the world's structure when she died, he said, eyes burning. I found out that someone else's romance was the spine of this reality. Mina saving Kenji, Kenji surviving, the world continuing. He laughed bitterly. And I didn't care. I only cared that she was gone. My chest tightened with horror and something like reluctant understanding. So you sabotaged it, I whispered. Jayan's eyes flickered. At first, he said, I disrupted Mina's attempts because every reset gave me another chance to search for her, another chance to see if the world would spit her back out. His voice grew rough. Then you slapped me, he said, and something like wonder crept in. And you spoke like her. You said things that only she could know. And I thought, he swallowed. I thought the world had finally paid its debt. The river's surface shivered in the wind. My throat burned. I wasn't her, I whispered, and the words hurt in a strange way because if I wasn't her, then who was I? Jayan's gaze pinned me. You are, he said fiercely, or you're a version, or you're a correction. I don't care which. I care that you're here. His hand lifted, trembling, and stopped short of touching my face. And I care, he added, voice softer, that you looked at me like I was human again. Tears stung my eyes, not because I felt romance, but because I felt the weight of being someone's anchor without remembering why. Kenji, I murmured, thinking of the boy who had almost stepped off a roof, didn't ask to be the spine. No, Jayan said, jaw tight, and neither did Mina. He stared at the river. I hated them for having a story that the world protected, he admitted. I hated that my story with you was treated like a mistake. He looked back at me, eyes dark. So I broke the world until it gave me a second draft. The confession was terrifying. It was also heartbreakingly human. A boy with too much power and too much pain, trying to bargain with a universe that didn't care. I took a slow breath, too. And now? I asked. Now the world didn't reset when Kenji stayed alive, I said. Now we're moving forward. Is that because you stopped? Or because you can't anymore? Jayan's mouth tightened. Both, he admitted. I could break it again, he said, voice low, if I wanted, but the cost. He looked at me. The cost is you, he said, and the way he said my name made it sound like a bruise. Every time I forced a reset, the world demanded payment. It took pieces of you, your memory, your instinct, your ability to recognize me. His voice cracked. It was punishing me by making you forget. Cold spread through my chest. That's why I didn't remember you, I whispered. That's why I only had fragments. Jayan nodded once, eyes bright with something like shame. I was selfish, he said. I still am. But I'm not stupid, he added, voice rough. I saw what I was doing to you. He exhaled hard. So, I made a deal, he admitted, with whatever governs this place. The comments shimmered. The overseer, the author, the rule keeper. He bargained for your health in this timeline in exchange for your memory of him. He accepted being unloved as the price for you living. My breath caught. You traded? My memory, I whispered. For my life? Jayan's jaw clenched. I traded everything I wanted, he said quietly, for the chance that you could exist without pain. His eyes met mine, raw. And then you came back anyway, he said, voice shaking. And you slapped me, he added, and the ghost of a laugh flickered. And you lied, and you kept surviving. I stared at him, overwhelmed. The story had grown too big for my tired mind. I had spent 63 loops hating Kenji for dragging me back, and all along, the loop had been driven by a boy who had once loved me enough to burn a world to rewind time. I should have been furious. Part of me was, but another part, softer and scarier, felt the shape of a grief I hadn't known I was carrying. If I was her, I whispered, then, did I love you? Jayan's face twisted, pain and longing tangled. Yes, he said, voice barely audible. You loved me in the stupidest, gentlest way, he said. You never asked for anything. You just left warmth in my path. He swallowed. And then you died, he whispered. And I hated the universe for being allowed to take you. The words hit me like a memory trying to surface, like the taste of yogurt, like paper under my fingers, like the quiet pride of drawing tiny umbrellas in the margins of letters. My vision blurred. The comments softened, almost reverent. This is where memory returns. Not as a flood, but as a choice. You can accept the pieces. You can build a new story with them. I took a shaky breath and stepped closer. I don't remember loving you, I admitted, voice trembling. But I believe you. Jayan's eyes widened, and for the first time, he looked like a boy, not an antagonist. Believe, he echoed, and the word sounded like water to someone dying of thirst. And, I added, swallowing fear, I think I could choose you now. His breath hitched. Choose, he murmured, voice broken. Not because a story says so, I said, forcing firmness. Not because of notes or fate, because you stopped resetting, because you let Kenji live, because you paid a price you didn't have to. Jayan's hand finally touched my cheek, gentle, as if afraid I would vanish. His thumb brushed my skin. If you choose, he whispered, I won't break the world again. I held his gaze. Good, I said, because I'm done living the same year. We stood by the river until the city lights blurred into dawn. When I went home, I slept without setting an alarm. I woke up at 9:14 to sunlight and silence, and for the first time in lifetimes, the absence of 610 did not feel like a trap. Weeks turned into months. Kenji continued therapy, slowly, painfully, honestly. Mina stopped being a savior and became a partner, learning that love isn't a rescue rope, it's a commitment to stand beside someone while they learn to swim. My internship became a job offer. My mother cried when I told her, then scolded me for not eating enough. I laughed, and the laugh felt like mine. Jayan kept his promise about rules. He didn't show up at my job uninvited. He didn't grab me in public. When he wanted closeness, he asked, awkwardly, as if consent were a new language. Sometimes, he still looked at me like he was afraid the world would steal me again. I learned to answer that fear not with lies, but with presence. Holding his hand, leaving yogurt drinks in his bag when he didn't expect it, drawing tiny umbrellas on sticky notes and sticking them to his laptop. He pretended to hate the notes. He kept every single one. One night, months later, the comments returned one last time as I lay in bed beside him, his arm heavy across my waist. The text floated faintly above the ceiling, soft and almost amused. Final annotation. The loop ends when the ones who broke the story stop demanding a rewrite and start living the draft they have. The words faded. I blinked, and they were gone. I turned in Jayan's arms and studied his sleeping face. In the old story, he was an antagonist, beautiful, dangerous, destined to burn everything he touched. In the new draft, he was still sharp, still complicated, still capable of harm, but he was also capable of restraint, which is the most difficult form of strength. I pressed my forehead to his shoulder and whispered, more to myself than to him, no more resets. Jayan's fingers tightened in his sleep, as if answering. Outside, the city kept moving forward, indifferent and luminous. The world didn't care about romance arcs or villains. It cared about rules. But people could care. People could choose. And in that choice, I found something I had been chasing through 63 mornings. Not a perfect happy ending, but a life that didn't rewind when someone felt hopeless. A life where despair didn't get to hit the reset button for everyone else. A life where my name wasn't a footnote. I didn't know what the universe was, or who wrote it, or why it had let me see the notes. I only knew that I was awake now, and that waking up meant taking responsibility for the next page, even if the page was messy, even if the ink bled, even if love, in its truest form, wasn't a rescue, but a decision made every morning, not at 6, 10, not on repeat, but once, forward, with both eyes open. The first truly new morning arrived with a small cruelty. Responsibility. Without resets, mistakes would stay. Without rewinds, apologies would matter. I learned this the day my new supervisor at the transit firm handed me a folder and said, "Your prototype schedule is off." In a loop, I could have fixed it by brute repetition. In real time, I had to learn to ask for help. I went home that night with my stomach tight, and Jayan was at my kitchen table, not because he had violated my rules, but because I had texted him a single word "come," and he treated it like a summons from gravity. He looked up from a yogurt drink, expression wary. "Bad day?" he asked. I nodded. He set the drink down and waited, quiet in a way that proved he was trying. I told him about the schedule, about the fear of being exposed as ordinary, about the years of living inside a script that never asked what I wanted. When I finished, he reached for my hand slowly, like he was asking permission. I let him. "You're not ordinary," he said. I snorted. "Everyone says that," I replied. "They say it when they want something." Jayan's thumb traced the edge of my knuckle. "I want something," he admitted, "but not your performance." The honesty made my throat tighten. In the weeks that followed, Kenji and Mina came to the bakery together, not as a public romance, but as two people learning how to exist. Kenji still flinched at loud noises. Mina still tried to fix things too quickly. But when Kenji's hands shook while counting change, Mina didn't grab the coins away. She just placed her hand near his and breathed with him until the shaking eased. Watching them, I realized how exhausting salvation is when it's treated as a solo mission. Love, real love, is not a dramatic rescue. It is the willingness to be present in discomfort without turning away. Jayan struggled with that lesson, but each time the old storm rose, he practiced restraint until the urge passed. One afternoon in late autumn, the first snow fell over the city like spilled sugar. I walked out of the office and found Jayan waiting by the metro entrance with a folded umbrella. It wasn't raining. He held it anyway, and the sight of that absurd precaution cracked something open in my chest. "You kept drawing umbrellas," he said quietly, eyes on the snow, "even when I told you to stop." I smiled. "You kept keeping them," I replied. He exhaled, a sound that carried years. "Rena," he said, and my name in his mouth didn't feel like possession anymore. It felt like recognition. "If the world offered me another reset," he admitted, "I wouldn't take it." I blinked, surprised by how much relief the sentence gave me. "Why?" I asked. He looked at me, and for once, there was no performance in his gaze. "Because I would lose the version of you who chooses," he said, "and the version of me who learns to be chosen." Snow landed on his dark hair and melted. I laughed softly and opened my own umbrella. Not because I needed it, but because sometimes symbols are how we promise things we can't prove. We walked home under 2 unnecessary umbrellas, laughing like idiots while the city shifted into winter. That night, I wrote a letter on real paper,